Hi, Caleb with Brownells here, and in today's tech tip, we're going to be installing parts into our Glock slide. Alright, so in the previous video, we installed everything you need for the frame. Went ahead and put this frame together. Now we're going to do the top half. So the slide we're working with here is the Brownells Glock 19 Gen 3 Extended. So this one basically just takes your Glock 19 and pushes it out to 17 length. But all the parts are going to install the same exact way as they would any of the other stuff, so it's no big deal there. So we have our slide, we have a barrel, we have a recoil spring, which I'll go ahead and I'll set that barrel down. Pull out this recoil spring. This is a Gen 3 recoil spring, okay? If you were doing a Gen 4, pretty much everything's the same except the recoil spring. Alright. And then we have all of our small parts. And like we did before, I'll just go ahead and dump all these out on the table. Alright, another important thing to note here. The slide completion kits, the one we're using is a Glock factory kit. Pretty much none of the kits actually come with sights. So you'll need to pick and install sights yourself. I went ahead and installed our rear sight because we have a ton of videos already on how to install dovetail sights. Including one we did somewhat recently where we install pistol sights manually. If you want to know more about it, go check out that video. That kind of deserved its own video, so we're not going to be covering it here. But we will cover the front sight installation whenever we get there. Alright, so with all that being said, oh, also we are using an RMR-cut slide, and that's just the cut on top. If you don't have an RMR-cut or if you don't have a window cut, no big deal. All of this stuff still applies to your build. Alright, so the tools we're going to be using here, we're going to be using some oil for whenever we finish. I'll show you all the lubrication points before we do our function check here. We're going to be using a front sight installation tool. This one is a Brownells tool. You can use, whatever tool out there. They make a bunch of great ones. But that's just going to allow us to tighten that front sight screw. And that's all we're going to use it for. We have a channel liner installation tool. Some of our slide kits come with this tool, some do not. Just kind of be aware whenever you're ordering. Alright, so we have this here. And then of course we have our front sight. Alright, so let's get started. First thing we're going to actually do is install that front sight. And I'm just going to loosen the nut here. This is an Ameriglow suppressor height front sight. Alright, and I'm just going to keep that in the tool for now if I can. Nope, I can't. Alright, I'm gonna lay it on the table. Okay, so the front sight has a post on the bottom of it. This one is a little bit dirty. It's used. I pulled it out of another gun. So it has a little bit of Loctite dried on there. Alright. But that post is just gonna go into the slot on your slide. Press it in there. Yours may be a little bit looser than this. That's fine. It's no big deal. Just press it in. Alright, now we are going to just basically tighten that screw from the bottom. So we'll come through the bottom here. And I'll need to see this part. And just tighten it down. Just like that. Okay, so before you actually do it, I'm just kind of showing you how it went in there. That was the dry run, literally, because whenever you're doing these, I recommend using Loctite. If you're using the factory plastic front sight, you don't really need Loctite on that. That's no big deal. But if you're using aftermarket metal sights like these, then I definitely always recommend using a bit of Loctite. Reason being, the plastic sights, that plastic kind of snugs really tight onto that screw and applies, constant pressure because the plastic flexes. That you don't really need Loctite. But here we are going to use some. And just a little bit. Alright, so now that you already know how it goes on, we'll just throw it on there. And tighten it down. Nice and snug. And something to look out for, your front sight once you put torque on it, may actually cant just a little bit counterclockwise because of that torque. Alright, or excuse me, yeah, it'll be counterclockwise depending on how you're looking at it from the top here. But you can actually just loosen this just a little bit, straighten that side out, and then snug it back up. And if you have a pair of smooth jaw parallel pliers, you can actually use that to bend it a little bit too. You can put it in your soft vice jaws and help hold it if you're having that alignment issue. And we're not having it here, so this is a terrible example. But those are some remedies for that issue should you encounter it. Okay. We no longer need our front sight tool. That was all we use it for. And the Loctite, we're not using Loctite anywhere else on here. If you find yourself using Loctite anywhere else in this process, you're going to have issues. Alright, so now we can go ahead and install our channel liner. So the channel liner is just this plastic tube here, and it's going to go into our striker channel, which is that channel in the back. Alright, so we just insert that by hand, then we use our channel liner installation tool and just press it all the way in, and that's it. Channel liner installed. It's that easy. Those go in super easy. Yours may be slightly looser, yours may be a little bit slightly stiffer than the one we had here. No big deal. They'll vary a little bit, but for the most part you're not going to need a hammer or anything like that. They just press right in, do it by hand. Alright, now we can go ahead and prep our striker as well. So this is your striker, which for all you hammer gun guys out there, firing pin, alright? And what we're going to do is you're going to have this other piece. It kind of looks like a short channel liner with a notch cut in it. And we're going to go ahead and insert this onto the actual striker. Just like so. So you should come out with something like that, right? The plastic should be overhanging the tail of the rear of the striker. Just like that. And I'll do it again so you can see here. Alright, we're just gonna drop it right on. Okay, so now we can take the striker spring, non-directional, doesn't matter which way it goes on, slide it over. Okay, now you have what are called spring cups, which are these little pieces right here, and those cups are what's going to keep the spring on the striker, and I'll show you how to install them. What you're going to need to do is somehow depress the spring without depressing the whole thing and then using all four of your hands to get those cups on there. An easy way to do it is to actually take your slide, stand it up vertical. Alright, so what you're going to want to do, we'll set our slide down right there, is take our striker, or halfway assembled striker assembly, put it on upside down and sideways so that it's sitting on it like that, right? So it doesn't drop down in there. And we're going to use the slide as our tool to hold everything. So now we can easily work on that. Alright, so what we're going to do is depress the spring and take our spring cups with the large end facing upward. We're going to slide the small end into the spring. And if you can see how that's sitting on there, we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side, connecting the radius of the spring cups. Relieve tension and everything holds in place, and that's what you should come out looking like right there. You can see how the spring cups are. I'll get that spring out the way so you can see how those sit on there. Large ends on the top, small ends on the bottom, wrapped around the striker. Now we have a striker assembly, okay? Alright, so another thing we'll just put together real quick here. So our striker safety plunger, if your spring's not already in there, just take that spring, push it in there, and it'll kind of like snap into place. You'll be able to feel it, and that's not going to fall out. Alright, next is the extractor bar here. So this, you have this long metal bar. One end of it is a larger diameter but rounded. The other end of it is a smaller diameter and pointed. Okay, we're going to take our spring and press it onto there. And again, this is something that's going to snap in place. Alright, and it should fit on there just like that. Alright, and then we're going to take this plastic plunger here, and these plungers are all different depending on the caliber or type of extractor you're using. They'll be different. Like, for example, if your extractor has a loaded chamber indicator or not, this piece will actually be different, so you kind of got to be aware. But if you buy it as a complete kit, an upper kit, you don't have to worry about that. There'll be corresponding ones in there. I'm not going to send you a mix match one here. Again, you just press that onto the spring and it'll snap into place. So the whole purpose of this thing is to, whenever it's inside the slide, it's going to push against your extractor, and this is going to properly tension your extractor. So it's pretty important for proper and consistent function. Okay, so now we can start putting these parts into the slide, and this is where things get easy. Alright, so the first thing we're going to install is going to be our striker plunger extractor assembly. And the way we do that, we're going to take our striker safety plunger, drop it into the hole, and you do have to do it in this order. Alright, the next up, we're going to take the actual extractor, and while depressing this plunger to get the slot lined up, you can see it moving there. Alright, we're going to drop our extractor in. Now, the extractor claw itself is going to face the front of the chamber, and there's a round part on the extractor that's going to face the rear. We'll just drop it in, and with it in there, we can let go of our striker safety plunger, and it'll hold that extractor in place. Alright, now this rod has to go in with the spring facing the rear. So you put the metal flat in first. You can see, just like that. And push it all the way in. It's not going to sit flush, that's okay. We'll leave it just like that for now. Alright, now we can take the striker. And you notice this piece kind of sticks off the bottom of it. That needs to face this gap here. That's what's actually going to engage our sear in the frame. Alright, so we'll push that all the way in, just like that. Alright, and it'll come to like a wall where you can't push it in any further. And just to kind of make sure everything's fitting properly here as well, we'll push the striker safety plunger down, and the sear should go further forward. And it'll be under some spring tension, but you can feel it. Alright, so that's good. And then it shouldn't go if you're not pressing that plunger. I'll do that again. Just like that. Alright, all that's left to do now on the back of this is to put on the back plate. So, depending on, there's a bunch of aftermarket ones and stuff out there. This is a Glock factory one. If you look on the back, you'll have this interesting kind of shape to it. I don't really know how to describe it, but that's going to face the back of your striker assembly, that plastic piece there, because that's what's actually going to hold your back plate on, okay? And what I like to do for this is get it started just like that. Just kind of put my thumb there on the bottom. And I'll take a tool for this. I'll just use this plastic, striker channel liner installation tool. And I'm just going to push down on the plastic. And then your back plate's going to go up a little bit further. And then now that extractor plunger's in the way. So now we'll just need to push that down. Alright, and your back plate will snap into place. Alright, now all that's left to do is install the barrel. With your barrel, this is, like I said, this is the extended, so it says extended on it. That'll just drop right on. and then the recoil spring. So your recoil spring, if you notice, one end of it's flat with a hole in it, and the other end has like this beveled knob. So that beveled knob is going to go to the front of the slide. And then you just depress the rear of it into the notch on the barrel, and that'll just lock into place there. Push that flat, and there you have it. So captured recoil springs are your friend for this reason. If you slip, it's not going to go flying across the room. It's just going to sit right on there. Okay, so now I'm just going to take a little bit of oil. Your choice of oil is fine. I'm using Pro Shot here, but you can use whatever you want. And I'm just going to put a little bit on those locking surfaces on the barrel. That plunger there, just a little bit. I don't want too much there. You do not need to put any kind of lubricant inside the actual striker channel. The whole purpose of that channel liner is to keep everything self-lubricating. So don't put anything in there. Leave it dry. It'll work, I promise. Alright. But you can put just a dab on that sear engagement surface without getting it all down in there. And I like to come right here as well. Put some on the back of that extractor. Alright, so we'll set that down, come to our frame, and here I'll put some on this top piece of the trigger bar. This is what contacts that striker safety plunger. I'll hit that sear engagement again. Alright, that locking block area, that slide lock lever front area, I'll just put a little dot right there. And then the only other parts I really do are the slide rails. So you got 4 rails, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we already have some on the connector. You should have did that earlier. If not, should have did that earlier. If not, you just put a drop in there. Alright, now it's time to mount the slide to the frame. All we're going to do, line up those front rails just like so, come straight back, and make sure our end plate's going to clear the actual ejector, just like so, straight back. Line up the rear rails, straight back, and then push everything on. And just go all the way back, let it go, and it'll automatically lock the slide to the frame. You don't have to push any levers or anything. You just slide it on there, rack it once, and everything's assembled. Alright, so at this point, what should not happen is the slide go flying off the front. Alright, your recoil spring should be nice and flush. And the way to check if everything's aligned is that the back of the actual slide should be nice and even with the back of the frame. If it is, that's a good thing. Check our barrel hood here. Should be nice and flat. All the surfaces matching. And then from here we can do a function check. So what I'll do is, rack it, squeeze the trigger. Alright, that sounded good. I'm going to hold the trigger down, and then I'm going to pull the slide back, let it go. Then I'm going to release that trigger, feel the reset. You'll feel the click of the reset. There it is. And then pull it again. Yeah, that felt good. I'm going to let off the trigger, rack it, make sure that trigger goes back forward, and everything looks good. And to check the safety of that, so this little piece on the trigger itself is a safety. That doesn't let the trigger go back unless your finger is actually on the trigger. So there's no way for this thing to fire unless you physically put your finger on the trigger pad and pull it. So what you can do is actually grab the slide of the trigger and try and make that striker go forward. Try and fire it, right? And if nothing happens, then that's good. Safety check's good there. And then again, you can, yeah, there it goes. All right, so you just assembled a Glock handgun. All right, that's all there is to it. Again, like I mentioned before, if you need help putting those sights on, putting that rear sight on, go watch the video we have on that. And if you have an RMR cut slide like this one, you can put, you know, whatever RMR footprint optic on there. Or you can just get a plate to cover it. If you plan on getting an optic in the future but don't have one yet, they make a plate that covers it. You can just throw that on there. Okay, so that's all there is to it. If you want to upgrade any of these components from the factory components, or factory upgraded components in our case, just basically the process is exactly the same. A lot of those components, if they're a little bit different, usually they'll come with instructions, but knowing how to do all the work on factory parts, that opens up the door to all those aftermarket parts you want to install. So definitely good piece of knowledge there, just to know how to do the factory parts. All right. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.